my main advice to people on non-GAAP measures is if you have a question in your mind about whether it's something you should reconcile or not, reconcile it, because it's a main focus for the SEC. It has been for a few years now, and you're likely to get a comment letter if you don't go through the process of doing that.
Joining me today is Merryl Werber, Senior Vice President, Chief Accounting Officer, and Controller with Kilroy Realty Corporation. Merryl, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, the SEC appears to be reviewing more than just the SEC filings, with additional focus being placed on press releases, earnings calls, and other external communications. Can you elaborate on the impact that this is having on companies?
Sure. This hasn't directly impacted Kilroy, but from what I understand, what the SEC is doing is confirming that what companies are putting out there in supplementals or investor presentations or on conference calls is consistent with the information that's being filed within their SEC financial statement filings, to confirm that there isn't information that's being disclosed outside of the financial information that is not consistent or in line with what's publicly being filed with the SEC. And I know that there are some folks in the REIT community who have experienced this, and something I expect the SEC to just continue to do going forward as they continue to enforce things like non-GAAP measures, and again, just looking for consistency and making sure people are telling the same story to investors that they are in their SEC filings.
And what is the process that you used at Kilroy when adopting the segment standard, and how has it evolved during the reporting season?
So we started looking into the segment standard actually at the last Nareit conference, when we heard the gentleman from the SEC speaking about how non-GAAP measures would not be accepted in the footnotes to the financial statements. And it's something that I spoke with Chris Drula directly about that day, and then worked with our auditors to try to understand. It ended up not affecting us directly, Kilroy, because we're a single consolidated segment. But I do work with a group of chief accounting officers all across the country, with different audit firms. And, over that period, up until literally like 2 or 3 weeks before people were filing 10Ks, the information continued to evolve. And the auditors were really scrutinizing and asking to see the packages that were provided to the chief operating decision makers in order to feel comfortable with the conclusions that people were getting to. But there were a lot of competitors that I know that we work with that their auditors were having them change information and change the way they were presenting disclosures up until a couple of weeks until they were filing their 10K. But again, it was less of an issue for us since we're a single segment. But I'm always very interested in whatever's happening in the technical world and working with other people to try to help them get to answers.
And how have the PCAOB inspections impacted the audit of your company?
So I've actually noticed it's been many years now, I would say at least the last 5 years, that our auditors are required by the PCAOB to obtain a lot more documentation, especially around significant judgments, estimates, significant transactions. And I know our audit partner at Deloitte had approached us this year earlier, probably about 6 months before the year-end audit, to talk about those areas that they felt that as audit firms, they had the most exposure to, and then we worked with them to be able to provide them the documentation that they need. And it just feels like over time that because the auditors are being held to a much higher level of accountability, that's resulting in companies such as Kilroy and other registrants to just dig deeper and provide a lot more information to the auditors than, I've recalled over, years before. And I've been in the industry for about 25 years now.
And lastly, with all that years of experience, do you have any best practices that you could share when it comes to the use of non-GAAP measures?
So my main advice to people on non-GAAP measures is if you have a question in your mind about whether it's something you should reconcile or not, reconcile it. Because it's a main focus for the SEC. It has been for a few years now, and you're likely to get a comment letter if you don't go through the process of doing that. We are overly cautious at Kilroy when we're disclosing non-GAAP metrics to make sure we provide all of the reconciliations. One example is in our supplemental financial report that we put out quarterly. We have several pages of reconciliations in the back for all of our non-GAAP metrics. And it's just something that I recommend that every company take a look at really closely, because you don't want to trigger an SEC comment letter on something like a non-GAAP measure and have it result into a further SEC review of looking at your documents.